Hello everyone, welcome to Automation E2E. In this tutorial, we'll be diving deep into FindElement and FindElements method offered by Selenium WebDriver. We'll explore how each method works, the key differences between them, and guide you when to use one over the other. So, let's get started. We will start with FindElement method. In our previous tutorials, we explored the behavior of the FindElement method when it locates a unique element, meaning there is exactly one element matching the specified locator. In this tutorial, I'll also demonstrate how FindElement operates when multiple elements match the locator. In such cases, it returns first matching element on the DOM. Now let's take a closer look at this behavior. We'll go back to our website, right click, inspect, and inspect this element. So as you can see, this has an input tag. We don't have to find this uniquely, we have to find multiple elements. So for that, let's write an XPath. I'll write input. So this XPath basically returns all the elements that has input tags in it. In our case, there are 4 of them. Now, there are 4 matching elements for this particular XPath. Let's see how FindElement method will work. It should ideally return the first matching element, that is full name in this case. It will ignore the elements that are following. So let's copy this XPath. Let's do driver.FindElement and we'll use by XPath. And we'll perform some action here, that is send keys, so that we can see which element it has entered. Okay, let's run this program. As you can see, it has interacted with the first element that the locator found. The rest 3 that were there on the DOM were ignored. So that is how FindElement method works with multiple elements. If we want to interact with all the 4 elements, we have to use FindElements method. Let's have a look at that. Now let's examine the behavior of FindElements method and how to use it effectively. As we know, FindElements method returns a list of web elements. In this tutorial, I'll demonstrate a way you can interact with all the elements found by the FindElements method by iterating over the returned list. To illustrate this, I'll use and explain a basic for loop in Java. If you are familiar, you can use an enhanced for loop, also known as for each loop, or even a while loop. However, knowledge of basic for loop will suffice for now. Let's see how we can interact over the list that is returned. For this example, we'll write a program, print all the label tags present on the page that we saw. So here on this page, we'll search for label. As you can see, it has found 4 elements. Let's copy this XPath and paste it here. We don't need this, and instead of find element, we'll be using FindElements. So here you see it returns a list of web elements. Let's write it down here and we'll name this variable as labels. So now we have a list of labels. Let's have a look at how for loop works. So in for loop, there are 3 parts present. That is, first is initializing an iterator. Second is a condition. So when this condition is true, it will enter the for loop. And when this condition is false, the for loop will end. And the third is updating the iterator that we had initialized here. So in our case, we will get a list of 4 elements. These are these 4 elements. So basically the size of the list would be 4. That is list dot size will be 4. In list in Java, indexing happens from 0 and then goes to the size minus 1. So in this case, 0 will have first name label, 1 will have last name label, 2 will have current address label, and 3 will have the password label. So when we do a get here, we have to start from 0. We have the value to initialize an integer. Let's name it as I from 0. Alright, so the iterator we are going to start from 0, and the condition that would be there would be I should be less than the list size. So if we evaluate this condition, it will be true till value of I is till 3. Once it reaches 4, 4 is not less than 4, so this condition will be false and we will exit the loop. So it is very important to determine this condition, otherwise you will end up in an infinite loop which will kill your program. Then we have to increment this iterator by 1. So for that we'll do I++. So this I++ will increment the value of I every time the loop is completed. So this is our for loop. Let's use it in our program. Here the name is labels. Okay. So here we're going to print the size of the list. And inside the for loop, we'll print the labels. So let's write system.out.println. Let's write as index. And in our case, index would be I, just for you to understand better. And then we'll write at index I, the label is, let's use labels.get and the index. So index would be a variable, that is I. And here we will get text. So what this line will do is it will print what index is going on of the array that we are going to fetch, and we will print the text of the label that is present at that index. So let's run this program to see how it works. Okay, the program is executed. As you can see here, size of list is 4. At 0th index, we have full name. 1, we have email. 2, we have current address. And 3, we have password. So in similar way, as in this case, we have interacted with all the elements to get the text of those elements. In the same way, you can use it for sending text or clicking on these elements, or basically perform any validations on this using this for loop. If you know the index already and you want to fetch a particular element from that index, you can simply use the get method from the list interface and enter the index that you want. In this way, you can iterate over all the elements that FindElement method returns. Now let us see how this method behave when there is no element matching the given locator, or when the element we are going to find is not present on the DOM. Let's get back to the code. Let's remove this. Let's first try with FindElements method. Here we have used this label tag. Let's do a typo here and see what happens. So this basically is something that is not at all present on the DOM. So let's make it as FindElement. So let's see how FindElement method behaves when we have passed a locator that is not at all present on the DOM. So I'll run this program. So the program is executed. So as you can see, it has thrown an exception. The exception is no such element exception. So whenever there is no matching element on the web page, FindElement method throws a no such element exception in that case. Now let us see what happens when we use FindElements method. So in this case, we'll write down list of web element and it will be element, and to see what is present in that list, we'll print out size of the list. Let's run this program. So you can see it has not thrown any exception. It has simply returned an empty list, that is list with size 0. So this is one of the differences between FindElement and FindElements method, wherein when no element is found, FindElements method throws an no such element exception. On the other hand, FindElements method is pretty forgiving in this case and returns an empty list, so you don't have to handle an exception. The FindElement method most commonly throws the following exceptions. As we have already seen, a no such element exception is thrown when an element cannot be found. It throws an invalid selector exception when the locator used is invalid or incorrectly formatted. Stale element reference exception is thrown if element is no longer attached to the DOM. Additionally, a WebDriver exception can be thrown due to general issues with WebDriver typically related to browser or WebDriver session. On the other hand, the FindElements method shares similar exception behavior. The key difference here is that it does not throw an exception when no elements are found. Instead, it returns an empty list, which makes it ideal for scenarios where presence of elements is uncertain. However, other same exceptions can still occur due to factors like invalid locator, DOM updates, or interaction attempts. Let's summarize the comparison. The FindElement method returns a single web element and throws a no such element exception if none is found. On the other hand, FindElement method returns a list of web element or an empty list if no element matches without throwing any exception. While FindElement method gives you the first matching element when multiple are found, FindElements method returns all matching elements in a list. When you are uncertain whether an element exists, FindElements is the better choice as it handles the absence of elements gracefully. Use FindElement method when you expect exactly one element and need to interact with it immediately. Use FindElements when you are looking for multiple elements or you want to verify presence of any element without handling exceptions. In the next tutorial, we'll dive into different types of weight available in Selenium, an essential topic you definitely don't want to miss, so be sure to tune in. That's all for this tutorial. If you find it helpful, do like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching.